Hi everyone and welcome to Paper Goodness. So today I thought I'd show you what happens to your coloring book if you decide to use watercolors in it. I will go through 8 coloring books that I have used watercolors on. Let's start with this book. This is The Fairies by Darcy May. It's made by Dover Publications. And at the front of the book, there's a series of these kinds of books, and they say to paint or color. And when I first got this book, I was kind of excited because it says, to paint. So I thought, hey, maybe this would really work to use watercolors on. That was not really the case. Now, the print of the book is light gray, which is great for watercolors, but as you'll see, here's just a half-finished page. This one is a bit more done, and then this one is done. And as you can see, these pages actually wrinkle quite a bit. So this one, you'll see that, and then this one. There's no bleed through on the other side, but the pages do wrinkle. I guess a couple of good things about this book is that the pages are printed just on one side and the colors don't bleed through, but it doesn't take water as much or as good as the other books that I have. So from the side, so that does wrinkle like that after just a couple of pages, and you'll see that in other coloring books that I have as well. So that's that one. Now the next one is this Art of Mindfulness, Lark by Lark Crafts, and I've done mostly colored pencils on these, but I have one page where I used watercolors, and that's what I'll show you here. Now this has printing on both sides of the paper, and there's a little bit of a bleed through, if you can see that right there, and there's a bit of wrinkling as well. And then the next one is this Impressionist coloring book. This was one of the first coloring books that I got. Was on sale. And I thought I didn't actually use any other coloring media on this except watercolors. And this is one of the very first pages that I did using watercolors. You can see it's a little bit like pale watercolors. And that's a little bit more vibrant. And that. So for this one as well, again, there's quite a bit of wrinkling and a lot more bleed through of the colors on the other side. But what's nice about this is that it's printed on one side, and you can practice painting on the I guess the classic pictures, which is actually quite fun. But yes, there's quite a bit of wrinkling on that. And from the side, there's that. Now this next one is like a Japanese set of Japanese prints. These are woodblock prints to color. They're by a Japanese artist, and there are 100 views of Edo or Hiroshige. Hiroshige is the artist. And this I found was really fun to do. I've finished a few pages. Again, there's buckling on the paper, but I found that I don't really mind that so much in this coloring book. So this one is one of the first ones I did here. Again, it's still quite a bit pale. I didn't use as much watercolor here. But this coloring book, again, is printed on just one side, and there is a bit of bleed through for this. Right there, you can see a bit of orange. And a bit of buckling and wrinkling here. Not as much as the first one that I showed you, but there is some. Now I'm glad that it's printed on just one side because the pages actually do bleed through for most of them. So I'll go through the pages that I've done. Right there, there. That one, you can see the wrinkling right here. And this one I'm not finished. And then, let me see. This, I use a lot more water than paint, and you can see it bleeding through right there. But I think this is a very fun page to color, and if you don't mind that wrinkling, it's great to practice watercolors on, or just have fun and not use colored pencils. Use watercolors instead of colored pencils. So this is actually one of my favorite books, even though it wrinkles quite a bit. The next one is Tolkien's World. It's a fantasy coloring book. It is made by Thunder Bay Books. Now for this coloring book, the pages are printed on both sides, but I have not found that they bleed through. Like for example, this one, see, this is, I used some really dark watercolors on here, and this is more water than paint in this one, but you can't see it on this side. And again, the pages buckle, but not as much as the first ones that I showed you. I really enjoy painting in this watercolor. I like Tolkien's book, Tolkien's movies. I haven't read all of the books, but I've read, I think, one. So I like these. This is one of the first ones that I did. Just show you that. They'll wrinkle, they'll buckle a little bit. So let's show you from the side, right there. It's not finished. This one is done. That one. So that one. So again from the side, right there. Now the next one is a very popular book. This is by Joanna Basford. This is The Lost Ocean. I think this is the third book. She has Secret Garden and Enchanted Forest. And I think this is the second coloring book that I got. I tried colored pencils on this one, but I switched to watercolors pretty quickly. So this is one page where I did watercolors on. And I'll show you on the other side. Those colors that you see are actually from this one. These are colored pencils. They're not from watercolors. So there's no bleed through from the watercolors. There's no show through. And there isn't as much buckling or wrinkling on these pages, even though they are printed on both sides of the page. So that right there. I haven't quite finished that one. That's watercolor. This is part watercolor and colored pencils. So the next one is Fantastic Cities by Steve McDonald. I love this book. This is such a fun. So this is the first page, and this is actually black and white originally, and I used watercolors to paint that. That was a lot of fun. This is one of the first ones that I did. Again, my colors here are not quite as bright as they are now. Let me see, that's not done. Okay, I'll show you this one because this is an initial wash I used with yellow ochre. This is not a finished page, but I'll show you what happened to this page. So there is a bit of buckling on it, but no bleed through. Again, these pages are printed on both sides. But I really love this coloring book. It's just a lot of fun to color. There are different views of cities. That's a mandala style page. So here from the side, there's not as much buckling as the others. That's that one. Now the next one, the last one I'll show you, is The Secret Garden by Johanna Basford. Again, and this is the Artist's Edition. And this is made of really thick paper. And it's not, it's printed just on one side. It's meant to be torn out and then framed if you want to do it, like if you want to display your work that way. And this takes watercolor really well. I have just this one finished page. I was practicing on the washes on this, so I tried to just put a flat wash on this page with watercolor. It doesn't quite behave like real watercolor paper, but it does really well. There's no buckling on it, no wrinkling, no show through. So you can do a lot with watercolor on this coloring book. So you can see, you can blend a little bit, and from the side there's just pretty much no buckling or wrinkling. So those are the coloring books that I have used watercolors on. Yes, if you want to use watercolors on your coloring books, you have to consider, like of course the page thickness, the type of paper. Like this paper is really not meant to be watercolor, to be colored using watercolor on. And these two actually take watercolor very well. And these two as well. And then the rest, this one is, I like this because of the subject matter. Now another thing that you can consider when you buy your coloring books for watercoloring is whether they're double-sided or printed on both sides or printed on just one side. Even though this one is double-sided, the quality of the paper is great, so you don't get that bleed through or show through or buckling on it. This one is really pretty much the best in terms of thickness. It's printed on both sides of the paper. And okay, what else? For me, there's another thing actually that I consider is the size of the printed or the coloring spaces. Maybe that's why I like this, because there's just huge spaces to color, and it's great for watercolor. One thing with the Lost Ocean coloring book, as well as I guess the other coloring books by Johanna Basford, is that they have really tiny spaces to color, which works great for colored pencils, but not quite so much for watercolor. You need a really small brush to do watercolors on these pages, and they're just teeny bitty. So that's that one. And these are the 8 coloring books that I have that I've used watercolors on, and I have really enjoyed them. So I hope that helps you decide if you want to use watercolors on your coloring book, and pick the coloring books that you're gonna try it on. Just keep in mind that some of them will buckle. Try to feel, when you buy a new coloring book, just feel the pages and see how thick they are. So that's it for today. Thank you. Bye.